Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second convening of the SLAAIT group, as we're calling it, ongoing discussion about all the issues that came up during the SLAAIT project, began over a year ago. So this is what we're up to today. Uh, it's actually pretty packed agenda, so I am going to be quick here. I just wanted to point out that I hope everybody had a chance to see a very encouraging IMLS report from 2023. Of course, this is the way their timing goes on those reports. The one that jumped out at me was the 800 million people that showed up at a library during 2023, up from definitely way under 700 million the year before. So this is a really good trend, and I think it's part of the backdrop for what we're seeing is a kind of a new desire to be with people in this age of over digitalization, which is a strange thing to kind of talk about since we're basically focused on digital technology here. But it's a great library story, I think. And So this is our lineup for today, and we're gonna start right off here with Richard, who we've had on the Libraries of Response several times. Uh, Richard is maybe one of our most uh, popular speakers around AI, and has a good kind of 30,000 foot level view for us. And so, Richard, welcome,
Thank you so much,
and
John.
uh,
Good to be here.
tell
Thank
us what you're thinking these days.
you. Well, I thought you all might be interested in hearing a bit of what, as far as I can tell, here sitting in the middle of Silicon Valley, what is the state of AI? I think until really this year, most of the emphasis coming from all the companies building out AI infrastructure has been at the platform, what I call the platform level. So that's, of course, the LLM models, the large language models, and then a lot of the public policy and legal elements that come from that. The energy drainage from building massive data centers, the trillions of dollars in investment that are happening all over the world into this technology. And I think one of the interesting things now, of course, we've moved into the world of AI agents, these so-called agentic AI era. Every era seems to last for about a year and a half around here. I'm not sure why that is. I think they used to be much more meaningful to have an era. It was like hundreds of years, right? But that's not the way they tend to think about it around here. Anyway, I think one of the ironies we're seeing increasingly is that the platforms, for one hand, they can't figure out how to pay for the LLMs. There's no clear pathway to making back the investments. And where, in fact, much of that may come is on the agents that are intended to operate on our behalf, right, to do a variety of tasks for us. But they live on top of these platforms. And so they have to charge the agents, I'm assuming, something in order to use the platforms. That, of course, gets passed along to us at some point if we're actually using them. So the whole economics right now behind AI, there's lots of talk about a bubble, a coming winter. People are not really clear how the financial implications, both of sort of the how you sustain this, I think, seemingly unsustainable LLM model, and then now this shifting towards the newer, sort of user-facing technologies of the agents, which of course bring their own, among other things, legal and social challenges that I think nobody has really thought to address yet. So I thought one of the things that would be useful for you all to hear about is my own take on the notion of trust, and we've talked about this when I've joined many of you in previous conversations. Um, and trust, in particularly in the context of artificial intelligence. I gave a talk a couple months ago in Lisbon at something called the Unicorn Summit, and as the name suggests, it's a gathering of hundreds of small tech companies who want to become unicorns in the world, right? So that means basically make a ton of money in rapid course and probably sell off and go buy an island somewhere. So I gave the talk in a spirit of trying to nudge them a bit. So I talked about what I called the tech spirit animals, and that there are three, not two, not one. And the one, of course, the unicorn tech spirit animal is this an idea of this sort of rare, fleeting, almost mystical creature that is embedded in the business models of these companies. And it's intended to demonstrate rapid growth and innovation and all of that. And the challenge, of course, is that when you only live by that one spirit animal, that inevitably the rest of society suffers because it's a very single-minded pursuit. So the second spirit animal that has come about here in the San Francisco Bay Area in recent years has been called the zebra. Many women founders in particular have noted that the downsides of a unicorn's only approach. And the zebra is intended, by contrast, to be more socially aware, more grounded, a herd animal that tends to operate well together with others, right? And so the notion is the zebra needs to work with and maybe in some senses tame the unicorn to create a more complementary approach. And my suggestion to this audience was that that actually makes sense to me. But there's a third spirit animal that we need to think about that I basically made up a couple weeks before I gave the talk, and that is the Akita. The Akita, by all measures, is one of the most trustworthy, loyal animals in the world. It comes from Japan. There's cultural legends around the devotion that this dog shows to family and friends. Its fierce protection against strangers from encroachment on the family. And it seemed to me that if you're looking at it not from the perspective of the companies, but of the ordinary human beings that are using the company platforms, we all need an Akita in our life. We need basically a spirit animal that represents us, that is loyal to us, devoted to us, and guess what, is trustworthy, right? As opposed to certainly standing by itself, the unicorn. So I suggested to this crowd that that was a necessary addition to their herd was an Akita. And I also pointed out that right now we're in the what I call the summer of AI slop. So that's the low grade content, right? The deep fakes that are almost real but not quite, and the stuff that you sit there looking at your Instagram feed for way too long. Um, and it can be sort of innocuous, it could be harmless, it could also be sort of, annoying. But the much more deeper concern I have is we're now entering soon, and I think already there in some places, the winter of AI fraud. So that is when these agents that are going to be everywhere, right, attempting to gain access to our personal data, our wallets, our identities, and all wanting to or claiming to act on our behalf. So part of my message to these folks at the Unicorn Summit was not just to sort of suggest humbly an addition tech spirit animal, but that the notion of the Akita and building legitimate trust with your customer base is the way to survive the coming AI fraud winter. That without that legitimate, authentic trust, uh, consumers, ordinary people, are going to turn away from this technology, and that does not benefit any of them and the massive investments they're making. So, Mike Leonet Alliance that I've talked about, I think, in a few other conversations with you all, is trying to do that on the company side. And as I've also discussed with you all, I continue to believe that libraries can be really a central point within communities for that trust to be built, to bring in now the AI agents era, which among other things means much less technical investment, right? A lot of this is can be done without a whole lot of advanced technology understanding, not a lot of machinery, not a ton of cost. And so working with people, whether they have their own agents or they're trying to figure out how to use somebody else's agent, or indeed a library becoming the platform to develop avatars and agents of information and knowledge that people can utilize. I do continue to believe that there's a significant role for you all in the communities that you serve, the patrons you serve, and the legitimate trust that you bring to the table, as opposed to needing to generate artificially through some spirit animal. So I'll sort of stop there, Don, and happy to
Wonderful.
answer questions.
Thank you. Once again, I guess I've overpacked this agenda. You've just set off an entire hour of conversation, Richard. But we'll
Sorry
just
about
do
that.
that. I also wanted to say that, part of what we're exploring with this group will be covered in the library and response sessions, just for example, there. And you remind me that trust is the thrust of a opinion piece that that just came out in the New York Times by Friedman. It's an extraordinary thing about how China and the US, in this kind of Cold War of competition around AI, are basically headed in the same place. They both need to have a trusted system, and that's like one system. So that's an interesting thing that I'm not going to get into, but I recommend the article to anybody and everybody. So we'll save all of our questions for the end. For anybody that has any, we've got to get around here. Uh, and as Diane Connery is with us, who reminds me that yes, this 30,000 foot level is really nice, but I'm interested in what it actually does for my patrons today. And so Diane is here with us to bring us back down to the practical level of AI in the library. And so Diane, welcome back, and tell us what you think is the main practical uses.
Okay, great. And wow, Richard, your brain. So from Silicon Valley to Pottsboro, Texas, I just wanted to share some of the things we've been working on. Dell put out a call a number of months ago wanting nonprofits who had an interest in AI to apply to work with their experts. And so Pottsboro Library was selected, and we were on calls with people from Dell, AI architects and engineers all over the world to try to solve a Pottsboro Library problem. So one of the things that we discussed was we have all these separate databases, like we've got the Overdrive, all that catalog and circulation history, which is separate from our ILS, which is separate from our data.gov information. And so their people worked with us over a number of weeks on how to unify these databases so that we have one database that stays updated and we can query it in natural language. And one of the exciting things for me is at the end of that project, one of the AI engineers was so enthusiastic about what we were working on that he asked if he could continue to volunteer for the Pottsboro Library. So now he and I have calls set up every other week to discuss how we're using AI. So I just thought that was interesting that corporations are interested in helping us. The other thing we've been working on are prompt-a-thons, and this is a precursor to down the road. I want to have a hackathon, specifically an AI civic engagement hackathon. And so in the meantime, we're offering these prompt-a-thons, and this has really generated some interesting discussions on unexpected topics for me, like diversity. Somebody in one of the prompt-a-thons got some results that they thought were too woke. And so it led to this discussion of being woke and how you control for that. And so really rich discussions. The other way we're using AI is our county has a lot of volunteer fire departments. Last night, there was a meeting at the courthouse to discuss this new sales tax. Not many people attended that, but everybody wants to have an opinion online about whether or not we should have this. So I recorded the meeting, and then I had AI transcribe the meeting, and then I had AI summarize the meeting notes. So I was able to post on our Pottsboro chat, our Facebook group, of here's the discussion. Again, it's leading towards civic engagement, how people can use this to understand what's going on in our communities and how to make their voices heard. And so I was really glad to be able to have AI say, okay, how can I make a Facebook post with this information? And I want to encourage people to go vote. I don't necessarily want to say how I think they should vote, but I want to frame it positively. This stays between us. And so it helped me format that Facebook post. And so far, so good. Nobody's on fire yet. The other big thing, and Richard touched on misinformation. So University of Washington has been working with libraries on how to, their first grant they had, I think, was strictly around misinformation and disinformation. And then I was in a cohort that we worked towards how do we teach AI in everyday life to people in our communities, because I think, especially in rural areas, that's one of our obligations. People hear about AI all the time, but don't really know what it is. So they are working, University of Washington is working on finalizing like in a box, AI in a box for libraries, a series of slides that are done in different modules. And each one has, I think, 8 different slides on teaching what AI is. And so they're going to have this whole toolkit available to libraries to use. And so I've been using it so far. So when was the last time you used AI? A lot of the things, and I've taken out most of the slides. I just wanted to hit the high points. They have videos that explain what AI is. Oops. And then examples. And so these are the different modules that you can pick and choose from. How to write emails and change the tone of them, or if you're writing thank you notes, that all of those just very, very practical. How do people in Pottsboro, Texas use AI? AI for interior decorating. This was one that I wasn't familiar with. So, you could say, this is my bedroom now. It's rustic, but I want it to look a different way. Creating fitness plans. So I'm going on a trip. I'm going to be in Moab for a whole month in November. What could I do for fitness? And I've got a knee injury and, whatever else your constraints are. And again, promptathons help people understand how you get to this place to get the responses you want. AI for image and photo editing, and this originally occurred to me because of all the fakes that Richard alluded to. How do people online look at these images and decide if they're real or not? And we've all seen examples of that, and some of them are driving me a little crazy because people are seeing these things. And one was inflatable houseboats. I live on a lake, and these videos of these inflatable houseboats were on Facebook, and I was distressed at the number of people saying, "Well, how does that work? And you can't take a knife on board, and don't they tip over? And how do you fill them up? And all these things." So it's clear people have a problem differentiating. And so on Reddit, I love Reddit. One of the practical examples I saw on the left there, someone saw that dress, gorgeous dress, online and ordered it. But when they received it, the middle picture is what actually came in the mail. And on the right is her trying it on. And so she said, well, I guess I'll learn to read reviews for these things. And I don't know how much she paid, but then it became this really robust discussion of how, if you look at that image on the left, how you should be able to tell that it's AI so that you don't waste your money and end up at the party wearing the dress on the right. And so I just thought it was so great. People are starting to tune into, oh, well, look at the lighting and the shadows and, the background and all those different issues. Trip planning, I've really done that. I am going to Moab for a month, and I'm taking grandkids, and this is the month we'll be there. And what do we need to know? What hotel do we stay in? What restaurant? All those things. And menu planning is another example. University of Washington has a module for as well. So those are my slides, and I came in, I think, right on time, Don.
You certainly did. And we can go back and do each one of those slides at least for another 10 or 15 minutes. Once again, thank you, Diane. Fantastic. I'm glad we're recording this because it's just too much to take in real time. But that's why we've got the recording. We'll put it up.
I put my email in there if anybody wants to reach out to me
Good.
afterwards.
Yeah, there it is. Thank you very much. So excellent work. Your practical approach to this is really illuminating as much as the social context, which is also illuminating. And so it's great that you joined us today again to help us get a real understanding of why stuff is interesting or valuable and also hazardous. All of those animals that Richard referred to. So now we turn to Kimberly Silk, who you will all know from Project SLAAIT. Kimberly was our primary administrator for the project. I mean, David would do what David does, and then we had wonderful work from Rachel and from our communications person, but it was Kimberly that really held it all together. Thank you. It was really Kimberly that held it all together, and Kimberly who did the survey and then the results and the report, and that's what she's going to try to do in a high-speed review right now. So good to see you again, Kimberly, and welcome, and take it away.
Hey everyone. So I've created a rapid fire, very much like Diane's, quick PowerPoint presentation, and I will share it in the chat when I'm finished, so you can pour on it over it longer if you like. So this is just a quick overview of what the SLAAIT report. So everybody here knows who was participating, don't need to go into that. Again, review real quick of the project activities. You were there, you know what happened. In terms of what we learned, these two slides are the ones that I want to talk about a little bit, just for, I don't know, 3 minutes, 2.5. What we learned over the course of the project,
I'm sorry, Kim, you have more time than that. You've got at least another 6 or 7 minutes.
Oh, wow. So in terms of the trends that we really saw through the course of the project was just overall, I would say, the amount of enthusiasm and optimism among participants for AI, trying to look past the doom and the gloom and recognizing that there are absolutely challenges and there are risks to be aware of, but there is also a lot of opportunity, and we just have to kind of be smart about it, and we have to do what we all do well as library people and think about the person using it and how can AI be used to help people accomplish their goals. So in terms of trends, libraries were interested in how AI could be used for good. Can we use it to enhance services, streamline processes, support workforce development broadly? And that can come in many, many different forms. Making sure that staff have access to training so they themselves become comfortable with the technology and comfortable with being uncomfortable with a technology that is changing so quickly that I don't know anyone who's actually able to keep up, even the people who spend a lot of time reading about it and trying it out and all those things. And that's okay, that in this period of rapid change, that feeling a sense of not being able to get a decent mouthful on the fire hose is completely normal, and not to stress too much about it. But helping staff gain some confidence around this technology, feeling like they have the ability to try things out, and through collaboration, develop some best practices. And of course, some guidance to develop policies and address privacy and ethical concerns. And none of this is anything that is, snapshot. These are constant, are things that need to be constantly developed and discussed and changed and updated because everything's changing so quickly. More trends was thinking about how to look at AI from a point of view so that that digital divide does not widen. How can we continue to use AI so that we can make it more accessible, and not just AI tech accessibility to AI related technologies, but just technology in general. Again, ongoing staff training and development needs, and this really speaks to what Diane is doing with Dell, is how can we use AI to speed up and increase the volume of data analysis that we can do in order to help us deliver better library services? How can we analyze the data so that we understand our communities, so that we can identify groups that don't get the attention that they need or deserve? How can we use AI to help us make decisions about collections, automate metadata, all these sorts of things? But most importantly, perhaps, is that the state libraries were looking to share, collaborate, and work together to reduce duplication of effort, so that they felt that there was a real sharing and knowledge exchange, and that they could get ahead a little sooner. Now, just as an aside, I came across a New York Times headline today, and I sent it along to Dawn, and it looked like it was the state health agencies were looking to collaborate together in the absence of and the demise of the CDC. How could the state public health agencies collaborate and work together and figure out what their work should be? And there was a specific mention around vaccines. But I was thinking myself, well, heck, the state libraries already collaborate quite a bit. Maybe that is a possible way forward, is that at the federal level, the IMLS is struggling. It's a huge loss, but how could we move forward? So just wanted to throw that out there. The last thing that I'll share is just a list of opportunities drawing from the trends. One of them is, and I think that that's what the series of meetings that Dawn has set up, monthly meetings for the SLAAIT participants, is establishing a reliable source of information or community of knowledge exchange in order to continue the conversation around AI technology and all of the changes. And thinking about how can we, as Richard mentioned, going from, I love that, from a summer of AI slop to a winter of, and what was the word you used? I heard mistrust, but Richard, what word did you use? The winter of horribleness?
Fraud. AI
But
fraud.
thank you.
Yeah.
Mistrust,
Sure.
fraud. It's in there somewhere anyway.
Yeah,
And so state libraries, libraries in general, were known as, trustworthy sources of information. We're nice people. People like us. People are visiting us more, says the IMLS. That's great. How can we take advantage of, as the technology is, going into kind of a not a great area of development, how can we pay attention to the good stuff that's happening? Again, using AI for data analysis, so we know more about our systems and more about our communities. Really pragmatic approaches, in addition to what Diane was mentioning, using AI-powered chatbots to sort of provide the answers to the easy stuff. Now, those sorts of things kind of already exist, but can AI make it better? Building on, for instance, New Jersey's AI Ambassador Program, there was interest around building that out beyond the lovely state of New Jersey. And again, like cultivating a culture of knowledge sharing, innovation. How can we learn more together? We are stronger together than individually. And then through that, develop
1 p.m.
develop and establish guidelines, best practices, and figure out how we can build trust and promote responsible AI use. I'm done, Don.
Bravo, Kim. Bravo. Yes, you got to the crux of our group here on sharing. And the other thing that came up in those surveys were an interest in presentations, which I think we were also satisfying today, certainly. And I'm glad you mentioned the states. You remind me, the structure of the United States is basically, independent states that have joined their sovereignty and so forth. It's evolved naturally, but it's the default setting. If the central government kind of dissolves, it just falls to the states to pick it up. That's just the way it's got to go. Fortunately, the states, like you say, with the health issue, seem to be ready to do that. And there are structures, there are state agencies that are capable entirely of doing things in concert. State Attorney General, for example, and state library agencies for another very wonderful example. So that's hopeful. That's hopeful. And you also mentioned access, which strikes me as the convergence point for libraries and AI, the central element of these two technologies. Can I call libraries a technology? I mean, they're an invention, as is AI, and access is what they both are centered around.
Yeah.
My sense is that this is a unique relationship and a unique matching of interests and capabilities, and it's going to grow more powerful as things evolve. And it's unique. I don't see any other kind of pairing that matches that. Who else has really the agenda of access other than libraries? Anyway, so um, the report there's so much in it. I'm sure everybody got the link to that, but we'll put it. Oh, there it is, right there. Thanks again, Kimberly. No, that won't be on the recording, but anyway, it's on the website. We'll send it out again in the next communication for people to review. There's a lot of wonderful stuff in there, and it was a lot of good work that you did such a fine job, Kimberly, really pulling that all together. So, in extending that, the idea of sharing is actually sharing among state library agencies. And so, this is the point where we would like to ask anyone. You mentioned New Jersey, and I see Jen there. And maybe, Jen, you would like to tell us how you have extended the work of the SLAAIT project and what's happening, that you'd like to share with us. Mute. No, but I can't hear you. Kim can't hear you. Sign language. Ah, Well, I don't know.
I heard a little bit.
Yeah.
How's that?
There you go.
Yes.
Good. Okay. Sorry. Got a new computer, that's all I'll say. So we've actually been it's kind of taken an interesting route. We have another large project going on around information literacy, doing professional development for folks in K-12 public libraries and academic libraries. And we just are finishing up our series, which included, I won't go into details, but we've got 4 pillars of information literacy as a framework. And then our 5th session is going to be on AI. And it's been really interesting to do the work around what the relationship, and I use that word cautiously, is between AI skills and information literacy skills, for example. We heard a lot from people attending the sessions. There's a lot of trepidation, particularly in the K-12 arena, around students using AI and whether they should or shouldn't, and any number of conversations. So we set up a special session just to talk about AI. But as we've been doing it, just really aware of some of the distinctions of using AI as opposed to more traditional library tools. For me personally, I grew up in a time of dial-up databases, which some of you probably remember, when it was all about fixed vocabulary and fields, and that's how you did things. So I'm used to that unidirectional conversation with the computer saying, this is what I want. I know how you're structured. Tell me what I want. Whereas now it's a conversation. I can't just put in a few keywords because the computer, the AI agent doesn't know what I'm asking for if I just put in a few keywords or like subject headings. So anyway, we're finding it fascinating, but I would, for the sort of librarians in the room, there is a really strong relationship between the skills needed, the skills to be effective in using or being information literate, as well as in AI literacy. So that I'm hoping that'll be comforting to some of the people we work with in terms of, those higher order thinking skills and critical thinking and, any number of different things. So that's where we've been spending our time this summer, is really looking at that. We'll be continuing to refine that particular workshop after we do it in September for another outing in December, and then hoping to get back to some of the public AI work with Josh Tan and some of those folks, but haven't quite gotten there yet. We've got a couple other things going on. So.
Wow. Did you describe something that librarians do to discover what people are interested in? It's called interviewing, or it's a special skill, right? To draw out the actual interest.
Interview.
Yeah.
You touched the reference interview. Yeah.
Yeah, reference interview. So is that something that you see AI could do?
Potentially. I think we don't know enough about it to know how effective it could be. I think it could be a big muddy hole as opposed to a useful thing, because it sort of flips the equation around and but on the other hand, AI is good at asking me questions about what I want. After I do a preliminary research, it'll say, okay, now, do you want this or do you want that? So in that sense, yeah, they're doing a reference interview, but I worry about the scope of information they're working from and, that kind of thing. But that's the librarian in me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I would think that if we were to create a walled garden of authoritative information, perhaps by topic, then an AI agent could do a reference interview, at least maybe to get down to a certain level of detail. And then after that, the librarian could take over from that. But you're right, you would have to be working within a walled garden of authoritative information, so we don't send them off on some crazy, wild, muddy goose chase.
Well, and
Yeah.
I think that's one of the issues that comes up because we have, I started as a librarian, a reference librarian before there was the internet. And so we had collections, and how good we could do reference depended on how good our collection was and how deep it was. So, but today is a whole different set of skills because we're using the wide world of information, not just printed materials or online databases. There's this whole thing, and we don't even know what it is. I mean, I speak personally, I don't even know what it is. ChatGPT, large language model, that's great, but what does it mean? Like with that really granular level, what am I looking at? What am I searching? Whereas if I go to a database, I know that I'm looking at the New York Times or, Personnel Today or whatever the magazine is. But on ChatGPT, you don't know what it's comprised of, so you don't know what you're going to get back out. And I think people make a lot of assumptions about what's going to come back out that may or may not be warranted. I haven't looked into it particularly closely, but I worry a little bit about that. And I think that's why some of the school librarians we've been working with are concerned about it too, is that the kids they're concerned that the kids aren't going to actually know what they're doing if all they know how to do is ask AI. And I would push back on that because I think asking AI is a specific set of skills that are important. But yeah, so it's interesting. Keep you posted.
Yeah, interesting times indeed. We live in them. Uh, it, it suggests this is a kind of a coevolution. I mean, the transformation of libraries, because it's just always going on, and now it's accelerating because the technology, information technology, is rapidly changing and putting more pressure on libraries to cope with those changes at the same time. And the idea that AI and libraries could sort of co-evolve in some sort of I don't know what to call it, a partnership, but in some kind of active, ongoing relationship, which is just interesting. Um, how what what do you detect from the libraries in New Jersey as they're experiencing this? Are they talking to you about it, or are
So they're all over the map. I would say we have another sister organization, Library Link New Jersey, that actually does the AI Ambassadors program. So they're kind of taking the lead on some of that stuff. In my office, we're looking at it more from our role as a research library and having digitized collections that could benefit from AI as a discovery tool or is used as a discovery tool and that kind of thing. So, I don't hear a lot from people about it other than the curiosities or the question marks. But the state itself is doing some interesting work around platforms for people to do benefits applications. So to fill out one set of information across different agencies, benefit applications, and helping people determine what they're eligible for based on their criteria and that kind of thing. So the state's doing some interesting stuff, but I haven't seen a lot happening at the local library level.
okay? All right.
Which
Well,
doesn't mean it's not happening.
no, uh, well, that's an interesting point. Are you seeing any new directives from the state government on the use of AI? Or remember, it was just so active. We had executive orders, and then the states were trying to issue theirs. Has that kind of died down, or?
Yeah, I think they've gone into more of a production mode, if you will. There's less
Mhm.
about the kind of bells and whistles and more about let's just get the work done. We have an AI hub here in Princeton. The state is still has the governor's moonshot. It is an election year, so he's not running for reelection. So I think that some of it's tampered down just because nobody knows what's going to happen after January or after December. So people are not inclined to move into something new that's sort of big and shiny because they don't know what the next governor is going to want to do or think to do. But universities are definitely looking at it. My library is affiliated with Thomas Edison State University, and they're really looking at AI is a tool in two ways. One is student support, to provide academic support to students, and the other in helping students to develop career pathways based on the programs that we offer. And one of the unique features of the university is they offer credit for prior learning. So they will assess someone's portfolio and say, oh, you have 15 years of experience as a manufacturing rep. That means you have the equivalent academic of, 3 credits of this, or, whatever. So looking at automated tools to help out with that process, get people started with understanding where their skills, their life skills come in, to be recognized as credentials for academic credit.
Oh, okay. That's following, applications for benefit seems to be a natural evolution. That's a good point in time for this. Is anyone else want to give us an update on happenings in their states? Just jump in.
Hey, I was a ringer. I knew Don was going to ask me. That's why I was prepared. So I don't feel like you need to be prepared.
Unfair. Well, that's what this thing is supposed to be, is that, sharing. So everybody should, bring something to, like potluck, right? So bring something next time. We'll try to preview that maybe a little bit, ask people in advance if they have things they want to share that we can call on them like we have with Jen. Um, okay, if nobody, yes.
Yeah, I can respond. Kathleen asked a question about the unified database, and what kind of questions we can ask from it. So I will say we're still stuck in a place because our ILS has an outdated system, so it won't let the API connect the way it should automatically. So far we've been having to export databases. But for example, we could do the annual report, ask all the questions that are on the annual report. How many books circulated for children, and in one database I would have that overdrive information and our ILS without having to go back and forth. And for me, every year I did the annual report, I'd have to look back at my notes of like, how do I get that information out of my ILS? I go to this tab and then that. This was just natural language. But it could also be up-to-date things of, what do we have, what books are circulating well in Overdrive that we don't have in our ILS? Because that might inform some purchasing decisions. And then we talk too about like promotional things. If we do an outreach event in a certain zip code in the following month, how many cards are issued to people in that zip code and what are they checking out? So it really is one of the interesting things to me is just like I haven't even conceived yet of all the things it could answer. But I don't know how to do a pivot table as many times as I've tried to learn. It does the pivot tables for me. So it does all that work and just could answer basically, how many people outside city limits have checked out a book this month, and how does our budget for adult fiction compare to the circulation?
Well, sounds like all you need to do is be able to ask the questions.
Mhm.
That's impressive. That's impressive. Anybody else have anything they want to put into the conversation right now? You did say you wanted to share. Did you mean you wanted other people to share? Well, we'll find out. I'm tempted to call on people, but Annie, any development? Okay, I'm not going to do that. If you want to say something, you know how to hit the button.
I have to turn to Alta and she's not here, so thank you.
Henry, how about Texas? What's going on? Thank you, Jen.
We have a new digital literacy consultant, Elsa, who's on the call, and is excited. Elsa, do you want to talk about your kind of plans for helping the libraries with AI?
Yeah, hi everyone. So when I came on this job, I had an idea of doing something similar to this cohort, not specifically on AI. It started off with just like technology issues, specifically for the smaller libraries who, maybe hesitant to or don't have the time to find out about emerging technologies, things like that. And then AI came on with a vengeance, and so now it's all about AI. So I do, for our first meeting, I want to first talk about like what do you want to discuss, and then inevitably I'm sure AI is coming up, and then we'll just take it from there. Um, we were thinking about also providing some resources on what is AI. I think initially we had said maybe we'll create them, but there's so much out there, like this University of Washington stuff, that maybe we can, take ideas from or use that. So we're still talking a lot about it, but in October, I'm thinking we'll have our first meeting and talk about technology things and AI.
Good. Well, congratulations. Get us updated as things evolve.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sarah. We've got a few minutes left, and maybe others have questions for Richard or Diane or Kim. We can open that up at this point.
So something that I wanted just to mention when Richard was talking about the spirit animals, and the thought about what if our spirit animal was a dog, someone who is loyal to us, that unconditional love, and a couple of weeks ago, Jeffrey Hinton from the University of Toronto was on a morning radio show, and he was talking about how we need to have the large language models not behaving in a way that self-preservation was the central intent, but that the LLMs, if they behaved more like mothers who wanted to take care of us as human beings, and would put us first as opposed to themselves first. And I thought that was a really interesting way about thinking about things. And then one of my favorite movies is War Games with Matthew Broderick in it. And if you recall, and also, Space Odyssey, where the bots, the robots, the agents are interested in self-preservation versus the preservation of the human race, and that, flip that way. But it just, when you mentioned the Akita, Richard, it just brought that to mind.
Yeah, thank you for that. And actually, the underlying premise behind my talk there and the use of the Akita is, in fact, the notion of fiduciary duties. So the duty of care and loyalty. And again, I've talked about this with some of you in previous conversations. And it's what my small alliance of companies is building out, that sort of governance layer premise on fiduciary duties. And what Hinton was talking about is actually very similar, right? Maternal instinct, maternal duties as a parent, as a legal matter. And unfortunately, I apologize, I'm a lawyer, but as a legal matter, that is rooted in fiduciary common law, right? You have a duty under law to protect and take care of your children, above and beyond, of course, your obvious parental as you see it yourself. So his notion, frankly, is not that far off from what I've been trying to describe as the way the company should be acting. I think it's unfortunate in a sense. The audience he was trying to reach, I think, sort of poo-pooed it, because this notion of AI as mother doesn't really appeal to them. It's too bad because I think it actually is a pretty nice analogy. But again, the larger point is it should be somebody who has an effective duty of care and loyalty to me, which I come back to my basic premise of libraries. You all do that with your patrons every day. You're trying to your best to help them, give them information they need, provide guidance. That is a form of fiduciary duty, as I see it. And so, it'd be great if we could spread that around.
I will totally echo that. I mean, if there was an emulation that you would want to embed into AI, it would be that of a librarian. I mean, no agenda other than helping you, no transactional conditions, just help. What do you need? Whatever it is, I'll just help you.
I can
To
mention real quickly, sorry, Don, Vint
yeah, go.
Cerf, yeah, Vint Cerf and Bob Kahn wrote a paper. It was intended to be sort of a just something to put out in the world back in 1988, and they talked about what they called the nobots, so KNOWBOTS, and the nobots. They basically were looking presciently, as they always did, way ahead into the future to where we are now. These were agents that acted on our behalf to find information for us. I think they wrote it for the National Science Foundation. It's probably out on the web somewhere. But I've talked to Vint about it, a little bit since then, and I've sort of told him you should go back to that. You should be talking about that because you and Bob, once again, were ahead of the game. And this notion, in this case, the nobots were trained to represent the end user, the customer, the patron, and to do what it could to serve their needs. So yeah, maybe we need a mix of nobots in the world now.
Just for reference, Vint and Bob were the co-fathers of the internet, as it's called. They invented the protocol for unifying communications across all the world, the TCP/IP, and led to this, first stage of this information revolution that we're undergoing still.
It looks like Kimberly in the chat channel just found that paper, so thanks for that.
Oh,
I should have known a group of librarians would figure this out
You know,
instantaneously.
it ends up being, and we're a little competitive. So,
Somebody won $5 or something here, I think. Yeah.
just kudos. That's all we really want.
Okay. Yeah.
So we can, the conversation will continue. We can do a certain level of interaction through mail, but I want to try to keep that to a minimum because everybody's just overwhelmed with mail. But I hope this is what everybody was expecting or hoping for, but we'll continue to evolve. We haven't really opened it up to all of the state agencies yet, state library agencies, but that's our intention to do it for the October meeting, which will be October the 1st, and see who else wants to join in on this because at this point, there's no need to limit it. There's no dues structure as it was for initial project SLAAIT, though that's doesn't necessarily mean we're not without overhead, but it's significantly less than it was for the project. But we certainly don't want to leave anybody out that would like to participate. So that's the plan. We would love for feedback on, grading this session, grading the idea, comments, questions, ideas are just always welcome. And we tried to accommodate a couple of those who talked about practical uses and sharing. So I think we did quite a bit of that over this past hour, quite a bit of that. And thank you, Richard. Let me just finish thanking Richard and Diane and Kimberly for their presentations. So yes, go ahead.
Wanted to comment on how often I'm hearing about more and more companies and employers looking for people that know how to use AI. So while in education, they're telling the students, no, you can't use it. The workforce is saying we need people that know how to use it. So how can we help our communities through the workforce efforts that public libraries are already doing in integrating AI use for the workplace?
Yeah, it's a real dichotomy there, and a subject for a whole librarian response session, which is a complement to this tighter group focusing on the state library issues themselves. So I'm going to call that a session and stop the recording. And thank you all.